Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitt. Alongside me is not Jack Piatelli. He is not here. We're going solo. We're going solo with this. This is Ryan Conwell of many places, which we will get to. Ryan, how we doing, man?
Great. How are you doing?
You know, I'm just happy to be in the studio. I want to apologize for YouTube viewers. My beard is out of control because we are in the playoffs. And I will not shave. I will not do it. I have a lot of superstitions in my life that you don't need to know about. Some of them are OCD. Some of them are I need to not shave. So let's kind of start with your background. Let's go back. I don't want to say how many years. Do you want to say how many years?
20 plus. Let's go with that.
Let's go with 20 years. You're in high school. You're playing for the legendary Liverpool, New York team that won states.
No, we didn't win states.
States? What was it?
Well, recently they just, this past weekend, beat Corning for the New York State Regional. So they're still advancing into the semis right now. So pretty happy alum. And my cousin's actually in Class B doing the same thing with Vestal. So that's why I'm still a little bit invested in the New York playoffs. But, you know, not as long as Liverpool's doing well and they're beating Bville, I'm pretty happy.
Right. And you played, were you in LSM or deep?
I was LSM for JV, which I know is your personal pride and joy right now.
It's not. This has been a bad year. I'm very upset. We're going to get to it on a future podcast.
And then, mostly close defense after that.
Okay. So you're a defensive guy.
Yep.
Right. And I think, you know, going back from that playing career, you went on to go to RIT, right? You didn't play on the team.
Nope, because I actually started my college at Alfred State, which at the time was a JUCO. I think they moved to D3. Lasted 2-3 weeks of fall ball. I'm a great experienced person to talk about how not being in the mental spot to be a good player can affect you. Definitely was not ready for college lacrosse. You know, even at the JUCO level was a big step up physically. How you have to mentally approach everything was a lot different. So, you know, that was the end of the college career, which was tough, and then wound up transferring to RIT after a semester anyway, and did not pick it back up there, which, you know, as you can probably imagine, if JUCO was a struggle, RIT would have been a little bit of a different animal.
So, yeah, I think you're one of two people I know. The other one being Vinny Ricasio. Shout out Vinny Ricasio, creator of Art of Lax and Art of Athletes at this point, that didn't play in college but are so involved in the various pockets of lacrosse that you're almost ubiquitous with it. Like if I'm talking box lacrosse in Massachusetts and I don't talk about you, I don't know what I'm doing. Because I should be talking about you. We're going to get there. I want to keep kind of pushing through this because we were talking right before we went on air. I had thought we met on, and this is actually funny. I have a ton of friends like this that I met on the lacrosse forums. That's how old I am, is that forums were a thing. And I was a moderator. I'm not going to tell you what my name was. You can go back into the archives and figure it out just by my language, I think. But I was sworn we met on that. Were you on that, though?
I was not. I generally stayed off of forums after high school. The Syracuse.com forums back in the day, the late 90s, early 2000s, were a pretty electric place.
Can I tell you, they're still electric? If I ever need to, not a pick-me-up, but if I ever need a reality check of like how crazy lacrosse fans can be, I'll go to the Syracuse forums.
Yeah, it was a wonderful, terrible place.
Yes, everything that was bad was good. Everything that was good was bad. It was even when they were winning, they were mad.
Yes,
it's one of the only fan bases in lacrosse. You see it in like other sports. You see it in soccer, football a lot, but we're talking lacrosse. Syracuse fans, I think. Well, let's rank it real quick. Let's have some fun. Let's rank it. Not worst fans. Let's just say most vocal. I almost want to say intrusive, as a writer and someone that's covered all these. You know, teams and things.
Yep.
I would go number 5. Let's go 5. 5 is like Hobart.
Yeah.
Or is that higher?
Hobart's, it's such a regional thing. I mean, their alumni base is gigantic.
Yes.
And they have very dedicated alumni, which definitely fuels it a bit.
Right.
So when you talk about anything within upstate, and you start connecting those dots. They're a smaller group at this point, but intense.
And then at 4, any given Ivy League team.
Oh, of course.
Any given Ivy League team. The conversations that go on in the Ivy forums on various forums, still to this day, are it's like I can't even describe it. It's not necessarily that it's negative. It's that it's insane.
I had to laugh during one of the games this spring. I forgot who was on the call for it, but one of the commentators saying how the Ivy League teams have some of the biggest trash talking teams in the country.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody was saying, it might be a bit of a surprise, but yeah, anybody in the lacrosse world is not shocked by that, especially if you are like us and you get to hang out around sidelines every once in a while.
Yes.
It's not a surprise.
It's not a place that I would bring a child for their first game, except I actually did that this year with my girlfriend's son. I brought him to see Dartmouth-Yale. And if you recall, that game was Dartmouth getting off early, getting up to a huge lead, and Yale being like very upset. And the Yale bench when they're behind versus the Yale bench when they're winning are two different things.
Yes.
And me having to explain what certain gestures meant, maybe doing a couple earmuffs every now and then. I mean, listen, they're all entitled, and I love Andy Shea, and I love that staff, and we have great relationships with obviously like Jerry Byrne and we got Torpy coming in. I'm excited to make a new friend.
Yeah, and many of the Ivy players I'm actually really good friends with, and they're wonderful people. But it's a different thing when you talk about putting on the helmet and going on the field versus what they're like off the field.
Yeah, MVP of social for Ivy is Larkin Kemp.
Yes, absolutely.
Great dude, love him. Shout out Larkin Kemp. Let's go to 3. 3 is tough. I don't know who 3 should be. I feel like it's probably Notre Dame.
So,
because they're winning, and when they talk so much when they're winning.
So you have 4 programs you haven't mentioned, and
okay, which one do you think is?
And I'm trying to figure out who you're leaving off because
there's only 2. There's 2. One is one and
yes.
One's the other one .
Well, and because it's been more recent is Maryland fans.
Oh, I just leave Maryland fans alone now.
So I'd say, and that's been more in the last 10 years.
Yeah, the energy that I put into Maryland fans is very little now because of my history with them. And I've told this. We've actually had this story, quote unquote, debunked on the podcast, where I did an old podcast, and the audio from that podcast was played in the locker room before Maryland played in a championship game, and that was denied by the head coach. And substantiated by several players and the trainer. So you can believe what you want to believe. I just kind of leave it alone now.
Yeah.
It was something about me bottling someone's tears when they lose. It wasn't great.
I'm shocked you would say anything like that.
I know. It's so nice now. So domesticated. I'm going to leave them out. But you can put them at 3 if you want.
Yeah.
You want to put them at 3?
Well...
Who are the you know who the top 2 are?
I do know who the top 2 are.
Okay.
And so that's where I was trying to figure out. You're leaving Maryland out by going with Notre Dame. The other thing that you run into is separating Notre Dame and Duke from the national exposure, because they have their own connotations with other sports too, that they automatically have a built-in fan base.
I think the Duke thing is very dependent on your relationship to Duke and other sports.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, if you hated Duke because of Christian Laettner, because like everybody did that's our age or older, that fits. But if you never had that and you never saw, or you never hated JJ Redick or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's very connected to the basketball, I feel. So I kind of don't think about them that way. I'm thinking straight up lacrosse. And my number 2 I actually want to put Syracuse 2. I'm going to put Syracuse 2, despite what I said about the forums, because the number 1 team that has, I'm sorry, the most annoying fans still, and throughout my time in the last 20 years writing about lacrosse, is Hopkins. Were you surprised? Is that who you thought?
No.
Who did you think?
Well,
I'm shocked.
Honestly, it's a coin flip between Syracuse and Hopkins, depending on your perspective.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I just.
Yep.
It's a coin, but Hopkins was the other team you were thinking I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And I will back this up by saying that no one has sent me more hateful messages than Hopkins fans. And I stopped covering Hopkins like 6 years ago. So I don't know what's going on. You guys are really upset with me, and I understand. You who, I am sure have been very upset with me in the past because I was, before I worked here, very inflammatory with my writing style and Twitter presence.
I wouldn't say upset, but definitely a lot of eye rolls.
Yes.
Like it just, a lot of things you would say and go, oh, Devitt. It's just Devitt being Devitt. And that was, before and after I knew you. So it still works.
Well, now that you know, I think the thing people don't realize is that like it's real, but it's like tongue in cheek most of the time.
Yeah. And we knew a lot of the same people.
Yes.
And so that would always come up they're like, oh yeah, once you get to know him, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, but he's still being obnoxious, even if it makes sense. And then you meet you and it's like, oh no, that actually makes sense.
Yeah. You're literally quoting a conversation with Connor Wilson, and I know you are.
Oh, absolutely.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to like how we kind of connected first. I thought it was the forums. It wasn't. We just tangented off of that. I think, I actually wrote for Lax All Stars, which is a site that you wrote for. I wrote for it before you, which I thought was, in my brain, it was a similar timeline, but it's not. It's off by like 3-4 years. And I wrote my weekly article was called The Devious Video Recap, DVR. And it could have been like Devitt Video Recap, but I didn't want that. I was like, make it devious. That's funnier. And I just remember getting slated for it because I didn't have an editor. Shout out Mike Z for being my editor. Appreciate you. And Matt Kinnear for my editor before that. But I'm someone who needs an editor just to rein it in. Even still, to rein it in. I still had... I usually tweet stuff like this, but I'm going to say it on the podcast. I had a line where, talking about the D2 championship this year with Dylan Renner, and it was for USA Lacrosse Magazine. I was doing the wrap-up with Dan Arestia for D2 season. And I was like, Adelphi won because Dylan Renner stopped more shots than a sober bachelorette party. And it got, what? And I was like, that's a great line. Why is that not going in? And he changed it to block more shots than Victor Wembanyama. I was like, I wouldn't write that. That's not as good as the thing I did.
Yeah.
But I understood. Now, I used to be out of control when that happened.
Yeah. No,
because you were my voice of reason a couple of times where I was like, why would they cut this? It's the funniest thing I've ever done. And you're like, first of all, it's not that funny. Second of all, obviously they would cut that. I would cut that.
Yeah, when I first started with Lax All Stars, I definitely had a lot more editing with Mark Donahue and Connor Wilson both. And then as I was writing more, it was more of a procedural thing. They were doing less of it, and that's when I realized, I need to self edit a little bit more, because especially when you're doing standalone lacrosse sites like that, you can let your opinions fly a little bit more, because that's kind of what drives it. So yeah, you can say some things that I wouldn't say you regret afterwards, but you could probably word a little bit better.
I mean, people will still come up to me and be like, "Hey, remember when you said that thing?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. I don't remember that at all." But I remember all sorts of other things. I just don't remember that. Like, I remember who Pete Poyon was, but I don't remember the thing I wrote about him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, I don't remember that. And what I've realized too, and we had a guest on that was like that, Corey Balkin, who I think was on, and he was like, "Yeah, you said that I was basically like drafting the B side of a single that never got released," and I was like, "Ooh, sounds like something I do." I don't remember doing that, but like he and I are now like friendly. Like we'll see each other and like hang out after a jamboree. You know what I mean? Like that happens. And I think that's actually the greatest part about lacrosse, right? Is that you build these friendships, these relationships. The relationships turn into friendships, and that kind of turns into everything else. And we all play still, which is I don't right now because I'm still recovering, but from the knee injury. But I've had the opportunity to play with you, play against you multiple. I don't even know how many times now, and you're still out there playing. You're just you're rolling with it, and you kind of made a switch at one point. To box lacrosse.
Yes.
Which Jack is missing out on this conversation. Jack will love to tell you he's the greatest box player in the history of the New England Blazers. But he won't tell you the Blazers were only around for like 4 years. So it's fine. First incarnation. I'm just kidding, Jack. Hopefully you're listening and being angry at the radio. So I think that going into that, I'm interested, 2 parts. I'm interested in why you did that and how that decision has kind of been validated by, or maybe not validated by, recent events.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into that?
Yeah. So my move into box, it was pretty natural. So I didn't, like we mentioned before, I did not play in college. I was just doing alumni games and an occasional summer league sort of thing while I was in college. So I stayed involved in the game, and it was something that I was still interested in. I still had a pretty deep love for lacrosse and still do. But once I graduated and was working full time, I was working at a pretty big company outside of Skaneateles, New York, which is right outside of Syracuse. And being a large company, somebody else that I worked with said, "Hey, you used to play lacrosse. Do you think we could get a company team together?" And I was like, "Well, probably. There's enough people around here that have played." And we couldn't even get some of the former lacrosse players out. Like we had the RAT face-off record holder, I think, Mike Yeomans. He was on staff there, and he's like, "Nah, I'm done playing."
Yeah.
So you have people like that just hanging around that, they're just like, "No, the playing is behind me. That's fine. I do stuff with my kids now." But we got a couple dads out. We got a couple kids of players and some of their friends, and it was enough to cobble a team together. And like a lot of adult leagues, it was an indoor team. So I missed the first week, and then the email that I saw coming out was like, "Hey guys, this was a good first showing. Let's make sure we actually get our numbers up next week for when we play Casey Powell and Friends." And I immediately sent an email to the guy. I was like, "Wait, what?"
Like, what's the name of the team again?
I was a bench warmer on varsity, now playing just in some men's league with coworkers, and you're gonna throw Casey Powell out there? So yeah, that's exactly who it was. It was a Syracuse alumni team that just entered for fun. It was when Casey was in town. He was playing for the Titans at the time. It was actually his MVP season. So
NLL,
yeah,
for those listening.
So he rolled in with all that gear and was just doing a little midweek run like a lot of players do, along with Reggie Thorpe when he was still with the Nighthawks and a couple of their friends, and they took it easy, but it was still a lot of fun, and it sort of gave me that perspective of just how accessible the game is. And I knew I was in Syracuse; it's a little bit different there. And so I kept doing those types of leagues for a couple of years. And then when I moved out here to Boston in 2013 is when I reached out to somebody that had graduated from the same high school, Liverpool. That was Danny Hetler, was out here since he played at Fairfield and then lived at Boston.
Right.
And reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm looking for lacrosse leagues. What do you have?" And he said, "Easily the best league is Boston Box Lacrosse."
Yeah.
And I've been watching the NLL, so I knew that side of box lacrosse, and playing with NLL players in season and MLL players that were out of season. I'm like, all right, yeah, I can probably handle myself decently well. So I wasn't too intimidated by it. Just bought the right pads. So I went in with my eyes open. I wasn't totally blind to what was happening, and I got very lucky with the team I got assigned to. So it was Randy Fraser's Boston Blazers team.
Yeah, that's fun.
Loaded with Vermont Voyagers. So, Joe Evans in goal, playing with, Martin Bowes, Greg Rogowski, Brandon Doobie.
Played Voyagers. Technically, I am on the Voyagers sheet.
Yep.
It was my last Senior B appearance.
And I never officially played Senior B, so you got that on me for sure.
It was fun. It's a great. I wish So we're going to get to what you're doing now, but I wish what you were doing now was around when I was younger, because the first game I played President's Cup, I think, Warriors Cup, and I was with Team Harrow, who sponsored the team. It was not Harrow people, really, and I was, I think, working for Harrow at the time. And I was on the team, but I wasn't on the team because I was working for Harrow. I was just on the team because I was going to play. And I remember playing with all these absolutely insane Canadian dudes, and I had never played. My box experience was in a rink behind where there is now a Buffalo Wild Wings in Concord, New Hampshire, where I learned to shoot on a small net, and I just ran back and forth, right? So I told them that, and they're like, all right, so you're going to be transition. And I was like, what is that? And basically what they don't tell you, if you're American and you go play in Canada and they say you're going to be transition, that means you have the most dangerous job in the entire game. And no one will tell you that. So please listen to me when I tell you, if you are playing in Canada and you are American, you never played before, and they say you're playing transition, pack extra pads, extra water, the massage gun, everything you could possibly have to make it through alive, ibuprofen, extra bottles, whatever you got. And you will just run back and forth, challenge for ground balls. You will play a little defense. You are not allowed really to play offense unless you have a breakaway. And even then, you should pass it to an offensive player, right?
Yep.
Is that the accurate description?
Yeah, and in fact, bring this up a little bit later when we talk about the nor'easters, because I'll tell you why I try not to label guys as transition.
Yeah, because they hate it and it's a terrible job.
It's it's a very loaded phrase.
Yeah, it is, and it's honestly, I did love it because it is. Listen, you feel the danger. Mm-hmm. It's not like field where like I can pass. I can always pass, right? Like that's my whole thing. I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, if the guy is big and scary and he's running at you and he's checking your arm so bad it hurts, you can just run away and pass the ball, and then go hang out in the crease.
Yep.
Just go do that, okay? That's what we're gonna do, right? And that kind of advice actually like carries over for box people. Because that's what I ended up doing when I, played box after that is I was like, I don't want to be transition. Can I just be on like the third offense that goes out or whatever? And they're like, sure, for everywhere I've played.
Yep.
So that's fun. But going back into how that got started. So you were in the Boston Box League, and then when did you start kind of moving towards developing your own, I guess, entity? I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, so the Boston Box League, I mean, that's great. I still play in that in both summer and winter sessions. I run one of the winter teams now because it's evolved. It's just sort of happened with Randy and Chuck being willing to give me a team, which was nice coming back from an injury. They had a good opportunity for me to do that. So I ran that, and I still stay involved and play with all the college kids in the summer, which is wild and quite a bit different and faster, but it is what it is.
Right.
But yeah, that was a great time, and that was really where I learned how to play the two-way lacrosse, or the I should say one-way. So where you have an offense and a defense.
Yeah.
I'd always just played the strict two-way. You go on, you run a couple shifts, and then you
up, down, off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I had been used to, and I knew about playing offense and defense. And as you get older, it's very nice having a role. That's one of the things I've learned to really like is, when you can start locking into a role. And that's one of the things that was great learning in that league was I, like we said before, was a defender, but I knew how offense worked. And so my job was to go set picks. Mm-hmm. And I'm a large enough person that's an okay thing for me to do is I can go out there, I can pass the ball off to guys, do the pass down, pick down, and go create openings and let the guys that have spent their entire life shooting and scoring do exactly that.
Just do that.
Yep. And you can carve out a role doing just that. And then, of course, started migrating back to defense more and getting on that side of the ball and understanding the defense side of box a lot more, as well as the transition aspect of it. So, through those years, definitely started learning more about box, then branching into tournaments like Lax and I. So I played in that every year. That's been around. And have since been lucky enough to jump over to Prague. And I've played there with Alice Rebreski for 4 years, which has been great. But that's really what brought me up to where I am now. And what you are alluding to is the Nor'easters, which has been a wonderful experience. So that started in 2018. And the Nor'easters, I know you've had Joe O'Neill with the Oaks on in the past as well. We started in a league called the IBLA. And the IBLA ran for a couple of years, and it was a good base to get going. They were doing something that nobody else was, which was a pretty ambitious national box lacrosse league.
Right.
Very informal, and it helped us fill the gap of what the Voyagers left. So there was no true senior B lacrosse in the New England area.
Right.
You could still get it if you wanted to go upstate New York, play in Can-Am, play in QSL, play in any of those. But that was a much larger commitment, and we could do this close to home. So the idea of it was pretty enticing. So I reached out to Joe Evans and some of those Voyagers guys, because they had helped run that team for a couple of years, and kind of picked their brains about what to do. And so they kind of set me up on the right path, and they were able to get some of their guys to join in. And we had some of the old Boston Rockhoppers and Kingfish from
I think you said that wrong.
NABLL.
I think you said that wrong. Can you say it again?
The Boston Rockhoppers.
Hoppers.
I'll let you say it because you're from here.
No, I'm not. I'm from New Hampshire.
You're from here in New England.
I'm from New Hampshire.
Yep.
We don't have accents unless you go past Concord, and then I can do the New Hampshire accent, but I think it's going to offend a lot of people. So I'm going to bust that out at a more opportune time. So you go from that, you set up the Nor'easters, and what I think people don't realize is that so many players, when they're between seasons in college, or when they're high schoolers going into college, the summer league choices are not extra competitive, and you might not learn a lot of things. But I will tell you this: if you go and try out for one of these many teams, so in your league there's Oaks, which is Western Mass, Piatelli's team, Stallions, which is Central Mass.
They're more Metro Boston at this point.
Are they Metro now?
Yeah, they're moving closer and closer to
Where's
the city.
their barn? See that box term?
They're still working on it. They might be Roxbury Latin, same spot as us.
Ooh. Oh, so you're sharing?
We might be sharing, but
Clippers-Lakers action? Okay.
They've been down in Norfolk the last 2 seasons.
Okay. And then you guys, and then, of course, the Northmen.
Yep.
Out of Maine, which I still don't get it. I've seen them play so many times. It's Kyle Baker. Kyle Baker's incredible.
Yep.
Like, shout out Kyle Baker. He was on Team USA for Box. He played at Merrimack. He's awesome.
All-world player in 2018 for Belgium outdoors.
Unbelievable, talent. You'd walk past him on the street and not know. And then he's like I almost said he's like Jeff Teat, but he's not, because Jeff Teat is Jeff Teat. But he's got that kind of air of when he's on the field, he's very intense. When he's off, he's very even.
Yep.
Very even, very cool. And he has assembled a team of players in Maine that I've played against them, and they come over and play in that New Hampshire league. One of the guys almost took my entire arm off, and I didn't even have the ball. So it's a wild team. It's fun to watch them play. So that's kind of the core four, right? Is there another team? Because it used to be Auburn, and then that team that's what Piatelli turned into.
Yeah,
right?
The Aviators became the Stallions.
Okay, so there's only 4 teams.
Yep.
And that's NABLL?
That's now the NABLL, and we've been doing that for the past couple of years. And that was just more reorganizing at the national level. But it's still the same region that we've been in the entire time. So our first IBLA season was the Aviators, the Nor'easters, and Mill City. And Mill City became the Northmen the next year. So Baker played with them in that 2018 year. And then took them over and, kind of realigned a bunch of my New Hampshire guys that were Voyagers, moved up to Maine.
Right.
And, we kind of had to rebuild for that year. And then since then, we've had that was a rough year. 2019 was definitely a rough year. But from that point on, we've been able to rebuild. And like you said, there's actual tryouts. We have to cap the number of people that we do have. And so right now we're at about 35 to make it through a season. And you can only have 20 playing each time. So, you can add as many people as you want. But in order to qualify everyone for playoffs and, actually get a good team feel, you need to actually have cuts and have some of those conversations, which is wild. It's a men's league in the summer.
It's not like junior B or senior B in Canada where you get a stipend or whatever. You're just playing.
Right.
Summer is just around the corner, and if you're looking for a great boys or girls lacrosse camp, Piatelli Lacrosse has you covered. With camp locations in Northern Connecticut, Western Mass, and Central Mass, Piatelli camps are a great way for players to develop their lacrosse skills and improve their game. Our coaching staff is made up of current college and high school coaches that are experienced in working with youth-level lacrosse players. In addition to boys lacrosse camps, Piatelli is excited to offer the Panthers girls camps for players in 1st through 8th grade. For more information on the Piatelli boys and girls lacrosse camps, including dates and locations, visit piatellilacrosse.com/camps. That's PIATELLI lacrosse.com/camps.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hedden, head girls lacrosse coach at the Frederick Gunn School, an independent high school in Connecticut. We play in one of the most competitive prep school leagues and place athletes at top college programs. To learn more, visit gogun.org. That's GOGUNN.org.
I really want to hammer home how valuable it is for those players that are looking to add another thing to their game, and they're lifting, they're doing their thing to get better, they're getting better for the college team, high school team, whatever. Can you sell those guys? So because there's a lot of parents and players that listen to this that their kids like, oh, I guess I'll go play in summer league, or like it's pickup, or I'll go play pickup, or maybe I'll just go work out all summer and just get on the wall. Don't do that. Go play lacrosse. That's my number one advice to every kid trying to get better. Sell a 19-year-old kid. He just graduated from an ISL school.
Yep.
And he's going to go play Liberty League because that's the easiest connection I can make. He's going to go play Liberty League. Sell that kid on why he should go try out for one of these teams.
So the big difference that you have is when we start our tryouts, the first thing I try to do is we get everyone is interested. We can have 50, 60, even 70 people there showing up for those first couple days. And I pull everyone in together, especially the new guys, and say, this is the league where you actually get to take it seriously. That's not the case everywhere in the summer. You and I have been in enough of those summer leagues and, off-season things where rosters are fluid. You can show up to a game with a penny and not even be in the league and jump in a bunch of games. And that's not what this is.
Right.
So, with this, it's a true locker room feel, which I think is most appealing to post-collegiate players. And so it has been a big draw for players that kind of start getting that void after they graduate, even if it's not the summer they finish up, maybe it's the year after.
Right.
And they start realizing like, oh, this can actually like be a team of a bunch of players that, you can hang out with and, travel to away games for and do all that. But, the real selling point is just the competitiveness on the floor. So you can play other indoor leagues, you can play other outdoor leagues where it's full of athletes, it's full of people at your skill level, and it's a lot like you're going to see in college. Really good, fast lacrosse. You're working on some things, but it doesn't quite match the intensity of a full senior men's team and the amount of physicality and the speed that we do play with, especially when you start talking about the Nor'easters Northmen rivalry that we have going. I know we've been on the short end of that by the end of the season for the last couple of years. We're kind of perennial second place team, unfortunately. But we've had a lot of one goal games, a lot of overtime games with them. With the Oaks went into overtime for the championship last year. And, people take this very seriously. So, there's true emotions at play. Everyone's playing as hard as they can. And that's just one of the things that I always thank the players for at the end of the season or even in the middle of the season is you can create a team and you can buy the uniforms and you can get a league to jump in, but you can't really make people care. Yeah. And the Nor'easters are probably one of the exceptions that I've seen where every player that is on the floor actually cares. They care about the game, they care about the team, they care about their teammates, and that's what really resonates through the summer is if win or lose, people, they get the emotional highs when you win a really good game, and people are excited for the whole week. And when you lose, people are really bummed out for that entire week, and they don't really even want to go back and watch the game film again. Yeah. It's a true testament to how much the players are invested in it.
All right. Speaking of high emotional investment.
Yep.
Do you want to go good or bad?
Either or.
You got to pick good or bad.
Let's go good.
Good. You're wearing the Moon Bears shirt.
Wearing the Moon Bears.
I've had the honor of playing for the Moon Bears. One of the most fun experiences of my life, other than folding my ankle over completely and thinking it was broken, and having to go to urgent care. But it was a ton of fun when I was playing with you guys in that one tournament. I wanted to play in another one. It wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
And I was injured again, which happens because I am old.
It does
but
happen.
I don't play like I'm old, hopefully. Not yet. Except for the wildly far out shooting, which I will never stop. So let's talk a little bit about Moon Bears, how that happened, and where we're at now with that. Because that's the team you play with in Prague.
Yep.
And also you enter tournaments like Lax Night that you referenced earlier.
Yeah. So the Moon Bears started, I want to say back in 2019 with our mutual friend, Connor Wilson.
Yes.
He was
Friend of me.
friend of me, yes. Of course, another New England lacrosse product with local Boston area with Weston grad down to Wellesley. Wesleyan. Oh yeah.
He's gonna kill you for that.
That's okay.
That's amazing.
We need to needle him a little bit more.
It's true.
But yeah, no, it was a great opportunity that he had. He had been playing in the Herbeski tournament for a couple of years, and he had been with a few different teams and knew the organizers and had some good connections there. So when one of the teams dropped, he put in for a team and had the bid accepted, and that's where the Moon Bears got their start.
Nice.
Was for that tournament. So he was building a team. We got some pretty good players, plus me, so that's always a bonus. But I had stopped my high school coaching here, which had held me back from playing for a couple of years,
right.
Because it's
hard to do.
It's right at the end of April,
Yeah.
And at this point, if you coach in high school, you're basically automatically off the list. Some people can make it work. Some colleges can make it work if they end their conference tournaments early enough and they're at the bottom, they can jump over. But, not many college coaches like planning on losing. So it's hard to get that commitment in January.
It's true.
But yeah, it's something that he formed that team for that reason. And then he started coaching in college. And so he asked me, hey, you've been running teams for a couple of years. Do you want to take over the Moon Bears? And I was like, sure. So we've been able to keep going over there. Just finished my 4th trip, which is pretty exciting. We finished in the top 15, which is a interesting little thing that they started doing, where if you don't finish in the top 15, you don't get an invite back.
Wow.
So
That's new.
there's a little bit of pressure these last couple of years, but we are going to be back next year. And in parallel to that, I have been doing the Lax Night tournament as well with the Moon Bears. So we do that every fall. To give some more opportunity to play these really good either tournament teams or senior teams from various spots around U.S. and Canada, and occasionally over from Europe. They bring some teams over, so it's a good chance to give players some real box experience that's not just New England playing New England, and they get to really see what this wider box universe is all about.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the bad, which is in this hand. Not bad. It was probably a good experience for you, but the PBLA.
Yep.
You were an assistant coach for the Chowder Heads.
Yes.
With Marty Bose as the head coach.
Yep.
Very short-lived. I have some of the merch. I went to a game. It did exist. They played in Maine. It was awesome. So much fun. The level of that, correct me if I'm wrong, the level of that is above NABLL.
Oh, very much.
Okay.
Very
good.
much, yes.
I didn't want to commit to, because I've seen both play and I'm like, that's better.
Yeah.
And I do trust my eyes with eye test. Can you talk about what that was? Maybe not how long it lasted, but your experience with it and how it kind of unceremoniously ended, which sucks.
Oh yeah. So that was actually it was a good experience. I'll count it as positive. I mean, it stinks how it ended. Those of us that have been around lacrosse for long enough time, a lacrosse season or I just say league ending is not a shock. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But this one actually got off the ground, and it looked like they were doing all the right stuff, which I think was the most disappointing thing about it. Was
logos were dope, jerseys were dope, like it looked great.
And while it lasted, they were treating us really well. And as it turns out, they were treating us too well, and that's sort of what was the undoing of it all. But it was a great chance to take some of these guys that were really good NABLL players. We had some Nor'easters and Northmen, and even someone from the Stallions. All of those were able to perhaps play their first box lacrosse in the NABLL or IBLA, and this was their chance to play pro. So that's not going to an NLL combine and, maybe getting cut in training camp. And there's been lots of stories like that over the years. Which is
every American ever. It's okay. You can say it.
It's getting better with more teams. It is getting better.
Is it?
It's slightly better.
Okay.
But it was a great chance to play real professional lacrosse. And so when, Mr. Bowes called me up and decided to ask me about the league and then said, hey, how do you feel about being the assistant? I had to, of course, ask him, are you sure? But, I could appreciate what he was going for. And, I couldn't thank him enough for what he was able to do with that opportunity for me, because it was a chance to really do a deep dive into X's and O's and team building of lacrosse. And, from the very beginnings of being a lacrosse writer, you kind of you talk to GMs and team presidents and head coaches all the time. And a lot of it's about how do they build their team.
Yeah.
And so there's all that information sitting in the background, and it's almost becomes like a fantasy lacrosse type of experience. And you start learning what it's like being on the other side of that very quickly when you have that list of thousands of names in a spreadsheet with their backgrounds and lots of players that can absolutely play lacrosse, and where do you draw the line, and what are the criteria you want to put that together. So we were involved for a couple months before we ever saw the floor with anything, and it was a lot of just, how do we want this team to look? What do we want our style to be? And starting from scratch is a lot of fun. So I can't thank them enough for that opportunity.
I went to tryouts.
Incredible.
I went to tryouts, and it was fun. Like, you talk about how when you get to do like the job you used to do, the job that I currently do, you get to talk to people, and again, you form the relationship, and like certain coaches will ask for what they want in a recruit, right? You'll know what they want, and they'll, if it's someone that they know that you've seen play, like, you might get a text or a phone call or an email. Like, it happens more and more since I've started working here than it did at IL. That was mostly like pro coaches, because I covered a lot of pro stuff, and they would ask me all the time about guys. And now it's kind of like trickling over to college, where you can only say what you see. And a lot of the stuff I write on the site on NewEnglandLacrosseJournal.com or LaxJournal.com is very positive, right? And that's by design, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not, I'm not out here to impugn your kid. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here to build, right? Hands give instead of taking away. And I think what people don't realize is I have notes, and my notes are not all what goes on. It's not everything that goes on the site. Like, I have good notes and bad notes, and I think that's kind of the thing that I think people know that now. Because I think at first they're like, what happened to Devitt? He used to be so mean and like honest. What is this? I'm still mean and honest. Trust. Ask anybody. I will talk to coaches and be like, all right, well, he does this well, and they'll be like, what doesn't he do well? I'm like, well, he doesn't do this well. He doesn't like calls against him. He throws palms up every once in a while. And I find that's the thing they really want to know.
Yep.
Like, what's he like? And I don't always have an answer for that.
Yep.
I don't make stuff up. I'm not sitting there being like, oh yeah, he's kind of a jerk. Or I would never say that. For me, it's the authenticity of, he does this well. He doesn't do this well. He seems to like to do this. Here are his spots he goes to. He doesn't. Here are the positions he plays. Because I think what people don't understand in club lacrosse, especially in the summer, kids don't even play their natural position half the time.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing all over the place. You've got LSMs playing deep D, and they like don't know how to do that cross crease support. And that's kind of something that they learn, right? They don't have to do that for their high school team because they're the best player on their high school team. So they get to be the LSM because the LSM does everything for them in the middle of the field, right?
Yep.
And it's always interesting to me, like, how that translates to box, training camp, fall ball, roster, spring.
Yep.
Like, that's the line. You got to go through a lot of stuff. You got to meet a lot of expectations to make it to a final roster, not only in college, but like anywhere past high school, right? High school, I coach high school. It's a lot of kids that are just on the team, you know? And it's one of the things I say to them all the time. Like, I'm like, you can be on the team or you can be the team.
Yep.
Those are your two choices. You don't have any other choices. Or you can quit. I've been asked not to put quitting as an option by higher ups for some reason.
Well, yeah, I think that goes back to the college decision I was going on is, or when we first started this, is when I was in college and making that decision, I was very much an on-the-team guy.
Yeah.
So that was me in high school. I loved lacrosse. I wanted to be around it. It's not like I was a bad teammate. I wasn't, super skilled player. There were definitely players better than me. So, yeah, I was present.
Yeah.
I was there. I was, kind of a practice player. But
you're contributing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I didn't have like the mental approach to be a great practice player on a scout team because, they would come out and say, oh, FM's going to be running their zone defense and they slide from here. They do this. And I'm like, just tell me when I'm supposed to go out and hit the guy.
Right.
Like that's all I know.
That was high school for me too. It's great.
I very much played soccer defense in lacrosse of just, be between your guy and the goal and, hopefully you get a turnover or a knockdown.
Yeah.
And, it'd make guys look covered and it worked well enough. And then you get to a certain point where it doesn't. And I think as I've been able to keep playing post-collegiately against all these guys that have played in college and at various different levels, a big thing that I've learned is that being a good teammate matters so much more than I ever gave it credit to. And, that doesn't mean you have to be the best player, but you have to try. You
Right.
have to have your head in the game. You have to support your teammates. You have to own up to what you can and can't do. So don't put yourself in positions where you're going to fail and everyone on your team knows you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. Don't be the guy that dodges into three people constantly and turns the ball over and then everyone just kind of like looks down at the ground when you're subbing off. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Know what you're good at.
That transition is very hard for a lot of people. I mean, I know there's plenty of people in New Hampshire and Massachusetts that I've played against or played with that have probably very different opinions of me depending on when they played with me, because I was a give me the ball, get out of my way guy for the first 8 years
Yep.
out of college, and I'm going to shoot. And if you don't like it, too bad, get out of the way. And if I hit you, it's your fault kind of thing. And now, like, I play completely opposite where I'm like, okay, where do you want the ball? And they'll be like, what do you mean? I'm like, where do you want it when I pass it to you? Do you want it above you a little bit? Like, how do you want to finish? They're like, just pass me the ball. I was like, all right. Like, okay, man. Or like, what do you want? Where do you want me to play on new teams? I'll just be like, I'll just go out and I'm just going to sell out every time I play because I am, as many have accused me of, a tryhard.
Yep.
So I will try hard anything I do.
Yes.
Which is why I'm not allowed to suit up when I coach high school now. I did it last year and I played defense and I'm screaming the whole time I'm there. And I've seen fear in my kids' eyes before, but not like this, where they were like, why are you yelling at us? I'm like, I'm telling you where to go. Go where I tell you to go. Let's go. We're doing this together. And they'd be like, okay. Like I would check someone, get them in the corner. I'm like, Dad, you're dad. Pass the ball. You better pass the ball. Bang, bang, bang. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, this is like box Kyle. This is, I'm yelling. It's scary. It's fun. And they're like, okay, coach. And then they're like, the head coach is like, I don't think you should suit up again. And I was like, good call. Like, and they still make fun of me.
Yep.
Like the kids that were here last year, they'll be like, oh, you could do what Coach Dev does and put them in the corner and yell that they're dead. And I'm like, you can't do that in the games, guys. That was just an example of being extra, right? But one last thing I want to get to before you go.
Yeah.
You are a very proud member of the Referee Association.
I am.
In Massachusetts.
Yep.
As someone that grew up hating refs forever, I have a couple ref friends. You're one of them. And I think the attitude has to change that we are raised with to like not appreciate that, because I have now seen youth a lot. I've seen a lot of JV, high school, and the officials. I've had an official cancel a game with 2 minutes left because a JV kid said something to him. Mm-hmm. It wasn't my game. It wasn't my team. It was the other team. But just canceled the game. And when he brought us out and had a meeting, and he was like, I'm not doing this. If my kid said to me what this kid said to me, he'd never play lacrosse again. And I was like, oh my God, what did he say? You know, but that kind of low, refs shouldn't undergo the abuse that they go through.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Like I'm on board with that. I didn't used to believe that, obviously, as a college coach, where I could talk and say whatever I want. It wasn't great. There's a couple coaches that were refs, or people that are refs. They're now retired. I want to say his name so bad, but I'm not going to, because you'll know who it is. He saw me when I suited up for my first year at Hopkinton, and I'm wearing the polo after 12 years of reffing me in college. I was really not great. And he just comes up to me and goes, yeah, get ready to bleep this. He walks up, he puts his chest next to my shoulder, and he goes, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm just the assistant coach. I'm like, you're not going to hear me once say anything to you. And he just goes, yeah, right. And he walks off, and we lose the game. I kind of see him in the parking lot, and I was like, see? He's like, we'll see. We'll see how long it lasts. And I'm like, oh, man, that hurt. You know? But that's the lesson that eventually people learn, right? Yep. Is you have to have more respect for the officials, because otherwise the officials will leave. And that's a real epidemic. I've been in the coaches meeting for New Hampshire, and I know people that have been in the Mass coaches meeting. And there's a huge referee shortage because referees, like, it's not fun to get yelled at and screamed at. I reffed soccer as a job when I was a kid.
Yep.
Right? And I gave a red card to a coach once because they wouldn't shut up. And I basically was told, like, you can't do that. And I was like, okay, well, they're yelling obscenities at me, and I'm reffing eighth graders.
Yep.
Like, what's the problem here? And now you just can't do that. Like, you will get punished. You will lose your job or your ability to coach that team. And I think that's a good step in the right direction. But I want you to do the impossible. I want you to sell players on becoming refs.
Sure. So the big change for me of why I became a ref was when I stopped coaching. So I did youth coaching for a while. Then I was in high school. And the big reason why I had to leave that was I have a pretty normal day job. Just desk job, 9 to 5. I'm not on school hours. When you're coaching varsity, that's rough. You're taking a lot of half days in the summer so you can make that 3 o'clock bus for an away game.
Right.
And so I ate into a lot, and it just became a bit too much for the 6 days a week, and it really eats away at all your free time. So it didn't quite strike the work-life balance that I needed. Wasn't able to do the family things that I also needed to do. So I needed some more flexibility, and that's where reffing came in, because I knew about the shortage. I still played enough and talked to enough of those refs that are out there that do love it, that I knew how much they need people, and they need people that know lacrosse. There's a lot of officials getting into it that are moving over from basketball, from football, from other sports. Hockey is another big one. And they're there because they enjoy officiating as a whole, but they're learning lacrosse as they do it. And I think if you're somebody that knows lacrosse, whether it's as a parent, a player, a coach, it's a great opportunity to give back to the game at a level where there's games being canceled and never played because they don't have officials.
We had 2 games moved this year because the officials were off doing prep school games.
Yep. And that's a normal thing. And you get a lot of these youth leagues are running 2 officials for every single one of theirs, because being a single official on a field is horrible.
You can't. That's the thing about lacrosse, man. Like if you're listening to this and you're an admin or something, like never do a tournament with one ref. It's not going to work, man. Like the field's too big. Even if you have the most in shape guy ever, he can't go see what's going on. 40 yards away.
Even a lot of it's just the routine stuff that you think of as a coach. You're back on the sideline watching it from a macro view of a player throwing a long pass. Mm-hmm. You can see that whole thing in your view. For an official, they're watching you throw the pass because there's a defender coming. Is there going to be a late hit? Is there going to be a high hit? Is there going to be a slash? Mm-hmm. Is the player actually going to pull it down and do a dodge and maybe ward? Right. Maybe the ball's going to come out and start a loose ball scrum. There's a whole bunch of things that could happen in that situation. So you're watching that. Then they release the ball. And while you're trying to pay attention to that, you then look over, and where the ball's going has 4 players, 2 from each team, mm-hmm. all ready to jump up and go for the ball.
Right.
Which do you watch?
Right.
And inevitably, you're going to have a game where you choose the wrong one of, okay, this looks like
or you miss the thing.
Yep. This could become a problem. And that's where, when you're a single official, that happens a lot more. When you have 2 or 3 on a game, the responsibilities are divided up that you can pretty routinely catch, the big stuff like that. But having the ref shortage is a serious problem. So that's why I jumped in, so that I could be on the roster, trained, have all the stuff mm-hmm. that, when you see those emails come out of, all right, we have, somebody wrecked their knee this week, we have to replace their games.
Right.
That's a pretty common thing, even with hundreds of officials across Massachusetts. Things like this come up. New games pop up all the time. High schools reschedule, youth leagues reschedule.
Yep. And
then the refs that were on that, can't do it. So being in that mix and being able to jump in on weeknights, on weekends, participate in the tournaments is huge. And you don't have to make it a full-time job. It can be 2-3 days a week. It can be 7 days a week.
Yeah.
It can kind of be whatever you want to make it. But if you're someone that knows lacrosse and you have, a couple nights where you could, jump in and get some, money to go out to have a nice dinner once in a while, it's a nice little benefit that you can have on the side.
I will also say, as someone that wrote the checks when I was at a college to refs, I was shocked at how much referees make. Any ref is going to make more than I made this year coaching high school.
Yeah.
In a third of the time, quarter of the time, probably.
Easily.
It's just one of those things where that's, lacrosse is a place where it's hard to make it your full-time job, but if you make it kind of your part-time job, it's a real nice bump mm-hmm. to if you put the time in and you get a good reputation, you can make a fair amount of money reffing, or even side reffing. Reffing youth tournaments is not unlucrative.
Yeah.
It's not a bad investment. I'm going to ask you how many conduct fouls you think I've had in 4 years in high school. Wait. JV and varsity combined.
Conduct or unsportsmanlike conduct?
Conduct and unsportsmanlike. Which one do you think how many I've had in 4 years?
I feel like a conduct foul to take the ball away and prove a point is probably in the neighborhood of 5.
Nope.
Really?
2.
Oh, that's impressive.
I have had no flags.
I can understand no flags, because I can also see you, if they start with the conduct foul, of you saying, okay, they're listening to me, which means I need to be quiet.
Yep.
Yeah. You can learn your lesson now. I'll give you credit for that.
Yes. In college, it was much higher.
Yeah.
It was a lot higher. But it's the maturation. You know, someone last week was like, "Hey, I feel like you've kind of lost your edge," and my eyes got really wide, and I was very upset in the press box at Philadelphia. And then they were like, I mean, I'm just kidding," and I was like, yes, but I'll remember it forever.
Yes,
because that is how we're built. Not me, not you.
Don't
very forgiving, very nice person. I just wanted to have you in because I feel like more people should I feel like this is the wrong way to say this. More people should know who you are, in my opinion, because you do so much for the game that people don't even realize that you've been behind the scenes on a lot of stuff. You've given all these people experience, including me, given so many people experiences that they probably would never have. I mean, I was lucky to play in Lax Night when it was Lasnai, and I was playing on the Powell team with my friend Chris Rosenthal. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll never play with Rosie again because he doesn't live near me. It stinks. And then we got another chance to play in it when it was in Utica, and he and I got to play together. And I didn't know he was going to be on the team. And then he walked in the locker room, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. I'm so excited to play with you. And he and I both had like the old man like run through, clear the ball, pass it off, and then get off. And we both were like, we should have trained more. But I can't thank you enough for that experience. And I am buttering you up so you'll let me go to Prague and just be like the last guy. That's all I want now. It's my last thing. Sorry if you work at New England Lacrosse Journal, you can turn off the podcast now. I'm going to play again. And I am going to do it very short window of time. I'm very excited. I'm feeling really good. I'm not going to play till 2025, but it has been my goal. You and Brian Whitmer have given me the goal to, if you're ready to go for next tournament, I'm going to do it. Yep. And I hope that happens, but if it doesn't, I'm still very happy to have you on the podcast, have you as my friend, and just want everyone to know like how much you do for everything. Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words, and thanks for having me on. And thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, who isn't here, I'm Kyle Devitt. We'll see you next time.